It's a tricky one because I think that even like with the vaccine conversation, when I was having my firstborn, like over a decade ago, I talk about this a lot. The conversation around vaccines was so quiet. And I can remember reaching out to friends and saying, what do you know about vaccines? I'm really trying to investigate this because that's what I am. I'm an investigative journalist. I love going down rabbit holes. And there was so little information out there. And the one thing that everyone kept telling me was, there's this book by Dr. Sears, and I have it on my bookshelf. I'm looking at it right now. And I like lived in that book, highlighting, trying to find information. It was so hard to find any information on the history of vaccines outside of that book. And now it's like you just did it, and so much information pops up where it's almost overload, and it's so emotionally driven instead of it just being, let's just get down to clinical base level of this schedule that is being shoved on our kids, and the reality that we do not have any long-term studies on this amount of stuff being injected into babies, and what happens 20 years from now, what happens 30, and it just keeps growing and growing. So I will tell you this personal story. I have someone very close to me who has a teenage daughter, and she went in just a few days ago because she had a little lymph node that was swollen. So she goes into the clinic. They say, oh, she's fine. It's just a little lymph node. That she didn't know that that's what it was. She thought it was a swollen bump. So she was really afraid. So, oh, it's just a lymph node. The girl's 16. So they say, but since you're here, she is overdue on some vaccines. So my friend, she says, okay, what does she need? She needs Gardasil, flu, and COVID, because now they're pushing this COVID shot. So she goes ahead and she gets all three in one sitting. She gets 2 in one arm and then the COVID shot in the other. And as they're administering it, the COVID vaccine, she starts foaming at her mouth and her eyeballs roll back and she has some form of seizure. She's on the floor, foaming, completely out of it, screaming, hysterics. They have emergency brought in. It's this huge traumatic situation. My friend thought that she was going to lose her daughter. And it was just this awful traumatic experience. So she goes back in because there's so much follow-up then to make sure that the girl is okay. It was this week-long process. When she finally gets her paperwork on the incident and what happened, they had it documented that she passed out due to not eating. Nothing on the connectivity to the vaccines that were administered, and that immediately, as the needle was still in her arm, she started foaming at the mouth and convulsing. And that's the reality of that's a real life experience that just happened days ago. And she is not the only one.
No, she's not, unfortunately.
No. And that's my concern, is that when we're talking about health and we're talking about protecting our children, that's part of informed consent, is knowing that these stories are out there and that there is so much destruction that's actually happening, that people are being harmed, and that if we're going to have true informed consent, we have to have these stories get out to the main public so that parents know that this could happen, and yet our kids are lining up every day to get these mandatory shots.